Good evening and welcome to the May 18th, 2021 meeting of the Cupertino City Council. This is our regular meeting. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call?
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Wei?
Here.
Councilmember Willie?
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Here.
Mayor Paul?
I'm here. And tonight we do not have ceremonial matters and presentations. We are now at postponements and orders of the day. Does anybody have any arrangements to the agenda that they would like to suggest, or are there any postponements? Seeing none, I will go on to oral communications. Oral communications is the portion of the meeting where members of the public are welcome to speak to any items that are not agendized. And so under oral communications, as with public comments for all other items, I will call on the first person with a raised hand, and by the time the first person is done, you will need to have your hand raised in order to speak. We have two hands raised at this point. They are from Jennifer Griffin and William W. Welcome, Jennifer. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Darcy. Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin. I am very, very concerned about the amount of housing bills that have been introduced in the legislature this late, I guess, in November, December of 2020, and then up until February of 2021. I'm very concerned that a lot of these are high density housing bills. A lot of them are issues where we're trying to have old bills like SB 330. We're trying to extend them. This was a bill that was signed 2 years ago, and I don't know why Mrs. Skinner is trying to have it go on for 5 more years. It was a bad bill to begin with. It's caused lots of problems for cities in California, and we're starting to have the walking zombie bills, the undead. There's no reason to have, if you write a bill well, it should be a one-shot deal. What is happening with these bills is that they are so poorly written that they get signed by or put into practice, and the cities are the ones that are having to handle the repercussions of the poorly written bills. This is not good governance. This is not the way you're supposed to introduce bills. A bill should be well written, well researched. A lot of these bills are going to be allowing building homes in fire zones on unstable hillsides. Why are we, the cities, having to thrash out the actual day-to-day living with these bills? The people writing the bills should think first before they submit these bills. A lot of the politicians that are supporting these bills are not looking at the water issues. They're not looking at the environmental impact. And we need to remind the legislators that when you back a bill like this, everyone's going to be looking at it 5 to 10 years down the road. We have no water. This is not a good time to be building high density housing unless we plan for it carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next speaker is William W., followed by Jean Bedord, and those are the hands that are raised. Welcome, William W.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and all the City Council members of Cupertino. How are you all doing? I would like to, raise my concerns about the latest 5G small cell proposal that I recently received. As you may have already aware of the Three Oaks Park situation, the latest notification received from Verizon, it's indicated the city has directed the small 5G small cell installation from the park to a street light pole directly in front of my house, which is 20 feet, in front of my house. And, first of all, this is creating a major, setback of what we have discussed before. And number two, again, this is an aesthetic concern with such a high, with the small cell right in front of the light tower, right? And also this specific street light is, it's on the sidewalk itself. It's not being installed on a road verge or anything. And now by design, we have the heavy top equipment on top of the light pole. I would certainly like to understand, have we looked at the risk factor in terms of falling object directly on the sidewalk versus on the road verge, which doesn't exist on Mosen Drive today. The other couple of things I would like to add is, the notification also has indicated city completed the analysis. Now, as a transparency point of view, I would like certainly to understand, where can we get the data and details of such analysis, and how can it be shared with the public so we all understand how the decision is being made. And on top of it, the other factor is it seems like that, we want to work with the carrier, we want to work the city, right? But with all the alternate suggestions that we always come up with, the question is, does the city have a list of options available for us to look at rather than asking the concerned citizen to keep doing their homeworks, right? We come up with the different ideas, and the response we keep getting is no. However, if we consider turn the table around, does the city have such a list that we can consider and work with? So that's my comments, and I will certainly hope that the team here would hear our voice and concern in terms of how we can work together in collaborative effort with the carrier to make this more sensible. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Our last speaker under oral communications is Jean Bedord. Welcome, Jean.
Hello, Kirsten, did you get my PowerPoint? Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Paul and council members. My name is Jean Bedord and I'm a resident of Cupertino. I'm here tonight to request that this council repeal the housing density bonus ordinance that you passed on May 4th. This council needs to think long and hard about its relationship to the State Housing and Community Development Department. Through its actions, Cupertino has developed a reputation as a bad apple, no pun intended, in providing housing for the community. Next slide. Most recently, the city received a warning that the recently passed density bonus ordinance may be in violation of state laws. However, this is not a new development. Council has repeatedly ignored feedback that their approach was problematic, starting on December 15th, when Carla gave a stern warning. Despite being warned of the potential for a lawsuit, the city pushed ahead. Next slide. What are the results? The very rapid response of HCD to the April 20th approval indicates Cupertino is on an informal watch list for the agency. The city may be able to skirt legal action, but the fact that this occurred damages the city's reputation. It is now the only jurisdiction with this type of law. There's also the matter of city compliance with SB 35 laws. Is the city headed toward expensive litigation with Sandhill Properties? Sure looks like it to me. What about the lawyers? The housing attorney, Barb Kalb, failed to clearly disclose to council, even when asked, that her client, Encinitas, had repealed a similar ordinance several weeks before consideration by this city council. Even more importantly, what about the scrutiny for the upcoming housing element? At this point, it's highly unlikely that the first pass will be approved, given Cupertino's reputation. Doesn't it make more sense to repeal the density bonus ordinance as a good faith measure? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jean. And just to remind our other members of the public, we're going to need our hands raised before the first speaker is done speaking. And so we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, and that is reports by council and staff. There are three items under this section. Item 2 is a set of brief reports on council member activities and brief announcements. Are there any council members that would like to provide those brief reports? And by brief, we mean approximately a minute or so at the most. So I do see a hand raised from Councilmember Willie. Would you like to provide such a report?
Yes, I'll go first. So yeah, once again, we hear from our residents about the concern of the 5G. And once again, we hear that, they don't feel that the city is really doing, something significant on their behalf. So I have arranged for a meeting tomorrow with Alex Lepp of Verizon, and I'm going to be proposing that they join with us, the community, for a team approach to these concerned locations.
30 seconds.
And I will hopefully give an update next council meeting. Hopefully Verizon is going to welcome the opportunity to work with the community directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Woolley. And our next stand is from Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I'll report a couple quick activities. On May 6th at noontime, I met with Santa Clara Council member Kevin Park to discuss, possible joint activities on mental health issues. That's one of my passions. It's more news to come. And on May 11th at 9 a.m., I attended the ABAC's Housing Element webinar because I could learn more. And this specific webinar is about incorporating environmental justice and safety into our housing element. So I learned quite a bit. So these are my reports. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Way. Just over half a minute. So very succinct. Vice Mayor Chow.
So is this for the committee assignment or?
No, this is just brief reports. And essentially it's,
Correct.
let me stop your clock. So this is basically in follow-up to the request that, because sometimes oral communications, there are some concerns expressed, and we just want to do quick follow-ups to some of these items. So I'll start your clock again, Vice Mayor Chow.
Okay. I see that also other council members share news articles during this kind of items. So I'm sharing that California League of Cities executive director wrote an opinion article that basically said to the lawmaker, enough is enough. The city needs time to comply with the onslaught of housing bills. And second, this is an interesting article that actually shows building more housing will make it more expensive because more people will be competing for the limited lumber and labor cost. Ends up, affordable housing will be even more expensive to build. So it's worth reading if anyone really cares about affordable housing. The third, I'd like to share that California is passing mass framework, and then the vote will be tomorrow, and the public needs to comment because it's going to limit advanced math classes to all people. So
okay, that's your time.
No extra track until 11th grade. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Councilmember Moore, did you want to provide any brief updates or comments?
No, thank you, Mayor Paul. This is going to be a pretty long session, especially when we get into the budget. So I'd like to help.
Okay, indeed. Yeah, good point. And so I'll go ahead and forego comments at this point as well. Item number 3 is our city manager's update on emergency response efforts, timed out approximately 5 minutes at the most. And so, Deb, would you like to provide us those updates?
Yeah, I'll try and speed through this as well. You may have read about the news that we are, because of our positivity rate being so low, below 1%, and our health equity rate being below 2%, we are moving into the yellow tier tomorrow, which is kind of interesting given that the June 15th announcement by the governor that a lot of the guidelines will be peeled back at that point means that the county will be in the yellow tier for the next couple of weeks or so. New guidance is for outdoors. Those that are unvaccinated should still distance and wear a face covering. Vaccinated individuals do not need to wear a face covering outdoors unless they are in a very crowded location or event. There are very high levels, and I'm going to skip to just the Cupertino piece in the interest of time. In Cupertino, we do have a slight increase in cases from last time I reported on May 4th. We're at 930 by zip code, 141 by city. Last time I reported at May 4th was 908, 919 respectively. But I'm super proud of the Cupertino community. For those that are 16 years or older, the lowest level of vaccination by census tract in the city of Cupertino is 72%. And we go up to 95% vaccinated in the city. So we're doing super well. If you take a look at the middle of the city, around kind of the city hall area or the kind of the heart of the city is about 90% vaccinated. So we're doing super well. It looks good for the June 15th potential rollback of some of the guidance. We just received the new health orders from the county that we are working through now, and so more information will be coming out about that. which includes workplace activation, and potential hybrid meetings starting in the month of August. And that's my report for this week.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Madam City Manager. And we're on to item number 4 on our agenda. That is reports outs on committee assignments from the City Council. Are there any committee assignments that council members would like to report on? I see Vice Mayor Chow followed by Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor Chow.
Okay. So I have on the 10th of May, I had a County Recycle and Waste Reduction Committee meeting. The next meeting will be June 23rd. And Silicon Valley Joint Venture is starting a food recovery program that's mandated under SB 1838. All the cities will have to comply by January 1st, 2022. And 14th of May, there is a legislative review committee. We reviewed a few bills. Some of them we will be referring to the City Council to decide. Next meeting will be June 18th. And we also requested a virtual legislative action day for the committee member and the city manager in August. And then on the 14th of May, also there is a CUSD 2x2 issue meeting, and we gave them a lot of updates. The parcel tax didn't pass, so the next CUSD meeting will be talking about what to do next. And then we have also tried to start to create a list of potential issues that we can communicate with CUSD in future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. And our next hand is raised from Councilmember Willie.
First one was Silicon Valley Clean Energy had the monthly meeting. 2 new power agreements are in the work, which will bring the renewable power supply to 62% of their demand when those new 2 units are up and running. One's a solar and one's a wind. Also, to add a little more to Vice Mayor Chow's on the 2+2, there's been, there was a lot of community concern about school closures. And so I brought that up as a question. And they said that because California is now giving out additional money to the schools overall to enhance their learning environments and to address the COVID, 4.5 million from one of those and almost 9.5 million from the other. And it's good through August of 2022. So for the time being, they're not going to be exploring. This is what I interpret. They're not going to be needing to explore school closures for the time being. I did express my concern that it probably is going to come back, but they didn't feel a need to discuss it further at this time. So $13.5 million they're coming into CUSD. So those are the 2. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Woolley. Next, we have Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you. And I originally raised my hand because I did see hands raised from the public, and we seem to have missed the public comment on the previous 2 agenda items. I did share the VTA pack on May 13th, and we had several action items. We approved and recommended a project list for the 2016 Measure B Bicycle and Pedestrian Planning Studies Competitive Grant Program, authorize the general manager to execute the necessary agreements for those planning studies. We recommended that the VTA Board of Directors adopt the Bicycle Superhighway Implementation Plan. And I'll just skip to the end, which was a pretty cool presentation on VTA zero emission bus implementation planning. They need to switch over to zero emission buses by 2040, and we got to see some and comment on concepts for hydrogen fuel cell buses, or buses which could charge en route, or buses which would return to the main station and get charged there. And we had a great meeting, the LRC on Friday. I strongly recommend that you tune into these. We get a great update from Townsend on all the legislation and and things going on in the political world, and it's very informative. So that is myself with the Vice Mayor.
Great, thank you. 30 seconds left on that. I did see a couple of the hands that were raised. I assume that they were artifacts from the oral communications because they were raised during oral communications after those hands went up. I'm also not 100% certain what our protocol has formally been on these report outs. I do recall that sometimes we do have people speaking on the city manager's update as well as the council. Well, I don't know about the council report outs from committee assignments. I don't remember those being commented on in the past. But I do remember our city manager's updates for the post-pandemic beginning, having some members of the public in the past. So let me make my closed session report out, and then I'll go ahead and bring it over to the two hands raised to ask to see if people did want to speak on this particular item here. A little bit backwards, but at least there's some substance, I guess, to speak on. We did have a VTA board meeting. I can report that our board is extremely close to appointing a new general manager, and I would expect by the time we have our next regular city council meeting in Cupertino that I'll be able to report out on the hire publicly. So we did have a closed session item earlier this evening. And for that agenda item, it was public employee employment under Government Code Section 54957B1. And the title is the city attorney position. The report out is that no reportable action was taken. And so we are still going through that recruitment process. I'm going to go ahead and bring it over to members of the public. I do see 3 people with their hands raised. And again, the topic here is our report outs on council committee assignments. And so the person labeled call-in user, followed by resident H, followed by Lisa Warren. I will unmute you in sequence if you have a commentary on this particular item. So first call-in user, welcome. And so call-in user, if you can hear this, I believe that the command to unmute is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Madam City Clerk, I believe it's *6.
Correct, Mayor.
Okay, so we're not hearing you call-in user if you're calling in. And so I'll go ahead and remute you. And so resident H, if you'd like to speak on item number 4, I'm unmuting your microphone. Okay, I don't hear anything from resident H either. Now, Lisa Warren, if you would like to speak on item number 4, I'm unmuting your microphone. Okay, hearing nothing there either, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the agenda.
Here, I don't.
Yes, Lisa, we can hear you.
It's really delayed. I don't know what's going on. And I may be speaking, maybe I understood you wrong when I did raise my hand. I just wanted to ask if Councilmember Willie could give a little information on how residents can participate in this meeting he's set up with Alex from Verizon, which was not reported out. It was the other thing. So I don't know if this was an appropriate time to ask, but it'd be good to know how to do that. Thanks.
Well, that's a fair question. Let me go first to our city attorney. Heather, this was item number 2, actually. So how would you suggest we go about it? Should the resident and council member take that offline, or?
I think he could provide a brief response in response to.
Okay, let's have that. Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, so thank you for asking that question. So this first meeting is meant to be between me and Verizon to get them to buy into this concept of a community team. At that point, then, we'll have, I believe, like 3 or 4 community members and 1 or 2 Verizon, for which we will be able to talk about what their needs really are and how they can address our community needs. And those meetings then would be open to more of the public. But I'm afraid to overwhelm Verizon with a lower level discussion. High level community team approach will they participate? And so,
Okay, Councilmember Willie, briefly, please.
Yeah.
So I think you've gotten your information across. Thank you very much. And so we'll go ahead and move on to our consent calendar at this point. We have item number 5 through, I believe it is item number 13 on the consent calendar. Is there any member of the council that would like to pull any of the items in items 5 through 13 from the consent calendar? I see 2 hands raised, one from Vice Mayor Chow and one from Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor Chow?
Sorry, that's an article. Sorry.
Councilmember Moore, your hand is raised. Do you want to pull any item from the consent calendar?
Yes, I'd like to pull item 7, the May 4th minutes, and item 8, the May 5th minutes.
Okay, Councilmember Moore pulls items 7 and 8. I'm going to go to members of the public now. Resident H, I will allow you to talk. Your hand is raised. Did you want to pull any item from the consent calendar? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll move on to Jennifer Griffin. Jennifer, your hand is raised. Did you want to pull any item from the consent calendar?
Yes, Mayor Darcy, number 11, please. I had a few questions about the rollout of that. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. May I have a motion from council for items 5 through 14, except 7, 8, and 11? And a so moved will do it. So Councilmember Willie, your hand is raised.
I'll move to accept 5, 6, 9, 10, 12, and 13.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think I might have misspoke and included 14. So thank you for enumerating those. Is there a second? I see Councilmember Wei has her hand up. Did you want to? Okay. Good. So there are no other hands raised. And so I'm assuming there are no further points of discussion on the consent calendar items in the motion. And so Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Wei?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, let's go on to item number 7. The subject is consideration of approval for the May 4th council minutes. And so, Councilmember Moore, since you pulled the item, did you want to make a comment on that?
Yes, could we take a look at item 13 on that agenda? I believe I voted no.
Okay, let's take a look. All right, item 13. So I'm seeing that was the consideration of proposed fiscal year this fee schedule update. And so this is stating that the motion carried unanimously. And so I think probably the appropriate thing to do would be to table this so that the city clerk can go back and verify the assertion you're making with regard to your vote.
Okay, and we had changed the order. We changed the order so the athletic field policy came first, and I voted no on that, and then it followed by item, I actually said item 13, so it was followed by item 14, and to correct myself, it was followed by 14, and let's see. No, do I have that right? No, I had it right the first time. The fee schedule, sorry, I had it right the first time. Item 13, I voted no on it, and it followed along with the athletic field policy. I voted no on that, and then no on 13.
Okay, so your understanding is that you voted no on 13. But it states that the motion was carried unanimously.
Right, and it was the argument I made at the start of that item, which was that if I had voted no on the athletic field policy and that the fees which were embedded in the field policy were put into item 13, then I needed to vote no on 13 because of the way the agenda was structured.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
let's just go with tabling of this so that the city clerk's office and there's nothing nothing preventing the city clerk from interfacing with you with regard to what the specifics are of your concern.
Okay, absolutely. And now on to item 8, the May 5th agenda. So it was item 1. I requested that a home be purchased for victims of domestic violence. That was one of my requests for the work plan, and I didn't see any notation of that, so I'd like to make sure that that's put in there.
Okay.
And I am seeing a hand raised, so I don't know if we need to go back to item 7, the May 4th minutes, or if this is for item 8.
Well, let me go back and ask the member of the public. Jennifer, did you want to speak to item number 7 or item number 8?
To me? Oh, I was just going to talk on 11
on the
about
next one. Okay. Okay.
barriers.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead and, well, now that your concern, Councilmember Moore, on item number 8 has now been taken into the record, we'll provide the city clerk with the opportunity to take a look at that as well and amend as necessary in our future council meeting. So let's go on to item number 11 now. Item number 11, the subject is an award of design. I guess it should be consideration of an award of design services contract for the Stevens Creek Boulevard Class 4 Bikeway Phase 2 Wolf Road to Highway 85 project number 2021-11. I see Director Roger Lee of Public Works is here. Welcome, Director Lee. And I wanted to take a very brief moment to thank you for your email from Public Works today, indicating to the public your contest to relate an experience with the Public Works Department and perhaps even win a street sign as made by our department, which I can attest because there's one in the mayor's office right now. Looks very, very good. So welcome, Roger.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Roger Lee, Director of Public Works. With Jennifer's request, maybe it's better that she asked the question first and I can respond to it. Up front, I can say no trees are going to be trimmed or removed through the design or improvements of Stevens Creek Boulevard, and we're not making any changes to the heart of the city. But that being said, maybe she can ask her questions first.
Okay, that sounds good. I have 2 hands raised from the public, Jennifer Griffin and Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Jennifer. And
Okay, thank you, Mayor Darcy. I appreciate that. And yes, thank you, Public Works, for all the hard work you guys do. I know this is Public Works Week or month. Anyway, yeah, thank you, Mr. Lee and Darcy. I just had a couple of questions. I know that this is going to be the installation of the bike barriers down the rest of Stevens Creek Boulevard, I guess westward out toward Foothill Boulevard. And I just had a couple of questions. I was wondering, where is this money that we're paying for, or is Apple paying for this? And then I have discovered that now I have changed my driving habits. I used to, in Stevens Creek Boulevard, I used to drive in the slow lane when I was going into town, from the east. I would go into downtown Cupertino. Now I have discovered that I strictly drive in the middle lane because we have problems with the slow lane at several intersections, primarily Wolf. 2 times the last time I was a passenger in our car, someone discovered that the lane was going away and he merged straight into my passenger door at Wolf and Stevens Creek Boulevard because he was going to have to turn right. And I'm very, very concerned about maybe the implementation could be improved. It looks like if you're coming down in the slow lane on Stevens Creek Boulevard going westbound and you're coming up to the Wolf intersection, they've squared the corners off and you have to drive across the crosswalk, okay, which means you have to look left and then you have to swing a 90-degree angle to turn onto Wolf Road. And I have seen, that's when the car almost ran into the side of our car, me personally, because this gentleman did not know that his lane was going away and he panicked and went straight into our lane of traffic. So we have maybe people aren't familiar with what you're supposed to do, but there is an issue where cars that are turning right on northbound Wolf are having to roll across the crosswalk. They cannot see people coming from the other side of the intersection, and people could be hit, and then they have to make a fast square corner. Now, I'm also concerned that when we're coming to that crosswalk by Blue Pheasant, that we need to make sure that if we're going to be putting bike barriers down there, that we have some sort of a flashing light that maybe is, there was somebody in that crosswalk when I was coming down the hill from the Los Altos side, and I barely saw them. So I think
Jennifer, your time is up. And actually, I have another hand raised right on time. That's from Lisa Warren. Peggy Griffin, you're next, and then followed by Lisa. Welcome. Welcome, Peggy.
Thank you, council members and staff. Thank you, Public Works, for all that you do for us with a smile. I want to ask if you could verify if the section between Tantow and Wolf is one section, then there's Wolf to De Anza Boulevard is the second section, and then De Anza Boulevard to Foothill, or De Anza Boulevard to 85 to Foothill. And I'm hoping that you can confirm that the design and construction and completion is left to right, like east to west. So from Tantow to Wolf to De Anza to 85 to Foothill, and nothing switched around. Anyway, that's all I ask for. And I back everything that Jennifer said about the turns and the lanes. I stay in the middle lane. It's horrible. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Peggy. Director Lee, I know you're consolidating the questions and you're getting ready to answer them once our public speakers are done. And so thank you for that as well. Lisa Warren, welcome.
Hi. Did it connect? Yes. So I just wanted to add a concern that I've had before, and it's still not fixed. Going east on Stevens Creek at Finch, where there is and now that school's back part-time, sort of, there's the right turn only lane now, and you're only supposed to turn on a light, but the light is yet not working. It's never worked, and I've seen horrible driving in that area, blowing through the light, ignoring it's a right turn only, not looking at pedestrians that are waiting at the corner to cross. I mean, I've sent an email to someone in the city asking, and this just reminded me, it's still a problem, and I'm just wondering when that's going to be addressed and why it hasn't been yet. That right turn light is not functioning. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Let's bring it back to initially Director Lee to answer the questions posed by Jennifer Griffin, Peggy Griffin, as well as Lisa.
Yes, thank you, and for the opportunity to answer the question. So, Jennifer, in regards to who is paying for the improvements, Apple did, and it was one of their first things that they did fund is the construction improvements from Wolf to Tantow. That's what is already being completed. As far as what is going westward, that is not Apple-funded projects as of yet. We are looking for using our local streets and road dollars, Measure B dollars, for construction of the section that will be from where we left off at Wolf to De Anza. So we are applying for $2 million for that section. Otherwise, it'll be coming out of our capital reserves, but we always will be looking for additional dollars. And regarding the intersection there at Wolf and Stevens Creek Boulevard, Initially, when we made the improvements, there was a learning curve for residents, and we did get a variety of calls. And we subsequently installed additional markings on the pavement and additional signage, and it's really leveled out where we're not getting calls, and it seems to be going well. But we do like the any feedback is good. So that was for Jennifer. For Peggy. In the staff report, we really detailed out the progression of how the work would be. So the design for that this is for is from Wolf to Highway 85, and then the last phase will go from 85 to Foothill. Now for construction, the first phase was already done. That was the Apple funded work, and then the next phase of construction is what this design is getting ready for, is Wolf to De Anza, and then it would go westward from De Anza to Foothill. So that's how this project is being scheduled. So it would be from, I guess, right being east to left being west. And I'm going to let our transportation manager, David Stillman, talk about Lisa's question about the light at Finch. I'm not as familiar as he would be with that. So David, could you respond to Lisa on that one?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Roger. Good evening, Mayor Paul, members of the City Council. David Stillman, Transportation Manager. The traffic light at Finch will be turned on probably within the next couple of weeks to have a similar operation for the right turning cars and the bikes as the westbound approach to Wolf has. We're in the final stages of finishing up the programming for the signal controller at that location. We need to get that programmed and tested before we implement in the field. I will add, though, that even in the absence of that right turn signal phasing like we've turned on at Wolf, the right lane is still, you're expected to turn right only from that right lane, even without the right turn arrow. We do have all of the signs and the striping in place that indicates that that is a right turn lane.
Okay, very good. And were there other items from our members of the public that we needed to address or that were asked? I don't recall.
Yeah, I believe I got them all, Mr. Mayor.
I think you did as well. So thank you very much, Roger. Thank you, David. And I'll bring this back to council at this point. I'll ask for a motion on item 11 to entertain any further discussion. Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I'll move authorization to authorize the city manager to award a design service contract for Stevens Creek Boulevard Class 4 Bikeway Phase 2, Wolf Road to Highway 85 project. Total authorized contract amount $231,163, with remaining balance of $350,000, budget of $118,837 to be applied to the design 3 phase in spring 2022.
Okay. And so would anyone like to second Councilmember Way's? So I'm actually looking at the recommended action on the agenda. I wasn't sure where the additional language that you were reading came from.
Mayor Paul, I'm not seeing the same numbers that I just heard.
Right. I mean, I'm just looking on the agenda. It looked like it ends with a dollar number of $231,163.
Oh, that was sorry, that was $213,863 plus $863 plus the $17,300.
Right.
Yeah, so it comes with $231,163.
Okay, just to clarify that. Okay, well, and then you had mentioned something about the spring.
Yeah, it says with the remaining balance of $350 budget to be applied to the phase 3. Is that in the motion or not? It's in the description.
I see. So I guess I'm just reading the recommended action. I suppose you're probably reading the staff report.
So maybe somebody can make a second with a friendly amendment.
Okay. Councilmember Moore, did you have an interest in doing that?
I would Personally, I would just move that we award a design services contract for the Stevens Creek Boulevard Class 4 Bikeway Phase 2 Wolf Road to Highway 85 and project number 2021-11 and just simplify it.
Or to move the recommended action, perhaps? I mean, is that essentially what you're asking to move?
Yes, that we authorize the city manager to award the design services contract.
Okay, and I take it you're offering to second that as a friendly amendment to the original motion?
Yes, and just simplify it without all the other parts.
Okay, and so let me ask the original motion maker.
I'll accept it.
Okay, so you're fine with simply moving the recommended action as described in the staff report and.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So I don't see any other hands raised from council. We have a motion and a second from respectively Councilmember Way and Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Willie does have his hand up now, and so Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, in respect to the residents, especially the first one, Jennifer, and the intersection at Wolf and Stevens Creek, I think I understand her concern that coming south on Wolf, turning west on Stevens Creek, it's not the usual nice smooth turn because of that jutting additional concrete. And it may be that that's a sign of the way to the future to accommodate the bike lanes. But I would ask that city staff really look at the appropriate curvature for those corners, because when you're coming down Wolf at, say, you've got green light 35 miles an hour, and then you're turning on to Stevens Creek without a gentle curve, and it's pretty much squared off. I can understand, catching people off guard and trying to make the compensate for that lack of a gradual turn by making a wider turn going over their line and into the next lane. So again, my ask would be that city staff double check that and send us a plan view to kind of show us how those cars are intended to turn. Is it truly to go from the turn lane all the way over to like the third lane on Stevens Creek to make that smooth turn, which isn't normally what people are expected to do. They're expected to turn from the right lane into the right lane. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Willie. And your comment did seem to invite follow-on from staff. And so before I call on Councilmember Moore, Director Lee, did you want to respond to anything that Councilmember Willie stated?
Yes, if it pleases the mayor and council, David Stillman can provide a response.
Okay, welcome back, David.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you, Councilman Willie. In response to your question and concern, yeah, we have provided or checked the turning templates for vehicles when we did complete that design, and the anticipation, the expectation is that cars will slow down in order to make that turn. And that's kind of the current thinking in traffic safety now is to reduce the radius of curb returns in order to discourage cars from making a fast sweeping right turn, which tends to increase pedestrian accidents. So in this way, the vehicles are required to slow down in order to make that turn, and they are expected to complete the right turn to the right lane on Stevens Creek Boulevard, which is required by the California Vehicle Code.
Great, thank you very much, David. Let me call on Councilmember Moore with a hand raised.
I just had a brief comment to add on with to what Councilman Willie was saying, that in Cupertino we have Apple, running a transit system with double-decker buses which are making these turns. So it's not just simply a matter of having small cars having to make this turn. We've got these large buses that have to come through the city that are traveling all around, and we also have delivery vehicles, the large tractor trailers that have to make these turns. So while the turning radii might have been looked at for cars, I really don't think that those buses from Apple would be making that turn into the first lane. I don't think that that's going to happen. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. I don't see any other hands raised. I'll go ahead and make a really quick comment. I absolutely hear what members of the public and my fellow council members are saying. Anytime you change the infrastructure like this, especially with a change that creates a new separated lane for bikes, there's going to be some significant, I think, effects. I used to live in an apartment complex on the corner of Torrey and Stevens Creek Boulevard, and this is probably a good dozen or 15 years ago, but we ended up striping, I think, a bike lane there. And so basically your room to maneuver narrowed. And that also happened along Rodriguez. So whenever you have those changes, you do have to find yourself being a bit more careful for the time being. Fortunately, I never heard of any repercussions of those narrowing of the driving lanes. Although where we live now, we live close to the Safeway on Homestead. And when that was fallow after it was the PW Market for a while, and then got developed as Safeway, there were a number of accidents there because there was a lot more activity. And so I always thought that, when we have this kind of thing happen, when there's a significant change in the pattern of traffic flow, it might be a good idea for our city to kind of look at that in advance and kind of think to ourselves, well, these patterns are changing. What can we do to notify? Maybe there's even an issue of signage. But absolutely, I drive along Stevens Creek as well, and I noticed that there's definitely a difference, right, in terms of making a very wide right as opposed to one that, you can kind of break down. So things to keep in mind. I'm, supportive of the motion on the table as well as the recommendation, but I think these are really great comments and points to be considered and follow up as well, hopefully. So without any further comments or hands raised, I'm going to ask our city clerk, Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote for the motion on the table?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great. We are now on, I believe, item number 14. And so item number 14 is a second reading of an ordinance, and that is ordinance number 21-2227, which is entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino, amending City Code Chapter 10.90 of Title 10 to prohibit smoking in multi-unit housing in certain outdoor areas. And so is there any summary from staff with regard to the second reading of ordinance number 21-2227? I see, Katie, you have Katie Nomura, welcome. Did you want to speak to this?
Katie Nomura, Assistant to the City Manager. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I don't have a presentation this evening, given that it's a second reading that didn't have changes from the first, but if there are any questions, we are here to answer them.
Okay, very good. I don't see any hands raised from council with regard to questions on our second reading prior to going to our members of the public, although I do see, Councilmember White, did you put your hand up just now because you wanted to ask a question or?
Yes, I would like to ask a question. So
Councilmember White.
In the ordinance, it includes or a second unit. I would like a definition on the second unit.
Great. So we do have with us our Community Development Director, Ben Fu, who could speak to how they would interpret the second unit. But just to summarize, it's listed with ADU, JADU, or second unit. And so it's interpreted as a common term in the field for something that's similar to a granny flat or an in-law unit, something that's similar to an ADU or JADU. And the reason for including it is, for example, there may be something that slightly falls outside of the legal definition of an ADU or JADU, but is intended to capture those types of units.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Katie. I don't think that we need the follow-up since you already encapsulated answer. And I don't see Director Fu. Oh, well, now I do. Did you want to add anything to Katie's answer, Ben?
No, I don't believe it's necessary. Katie captured it perfectly, so thank you.
Okay, very good. I see Vice Mayor Chow with her hand raised. Vice Mayor Chow.
Yeah, I do have a question. So a unit that doesn't qualify as ADU or JADU will now have to comply with the no smoking ordinance we adopted here, right? So if someone has a brand new unit, somehow the entire house will have to be non-smoking. Is that true?
Yes, Katie, you are indicating.
That's correct.
You are nodding your head.
And she said that that's correct as well.
Okay. So if any, okay. So I think we are invading on property right because that is even if someone that's not qualified. Okay, so now another question is, so as I understand, we got an explanation that there is not a formal definition of second unit in our ordinance. There is also a historical understanding that's very dangerous because any person can come in and then now interpret it as something different. And then we have housing bills that's defined as multi-unit unit, and then they could get streamlined. I wonder, would now this interpretation of second unit mean some housing with a granny unit will be considered multi-unit housing, and somehow certain housing bill might apply to them?
Okay, thank you for your second question, Vice Mayor Chow. And Katie, did you or Ben, did you want to
Could I
speak?
get an answer from the attorney?
Well, sure. I was going to ask either Katie or Ben, but Madam City Attorney, did you want to speak to Vice Mayor Chow's question?
Well, this is Community Development Director's interpretation of second unit for purposes of the secondhand. And so that's just the historical definition. And if some future housing law comes along and impact on second unit, that interpretation would be pursuant to state law, and we don't know what that is yet.
But state law sometimes will then defer to the city definition. So if the city says a granny unit is counted as second unit, then a single family home would become a multi-unit apartment under that definition.
Well, this is imagining the way future legislation that hasn't been created yet would apply. So I think what you're saying is,
do we have maybe
the problem exists whether ordinance is adopted or not.
I will reframe my question. Is there any existing housing bill that specify multi-unit as 2 or more units?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go on to our members of the public. I see one hand raised from Jean Bedord, and to let other members of the public and remind everyone, as long as your hand is up by the end of the first speaker concluding, I will call on you. And if your hand is not raised, I will not. And so welcome, Jean.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and council members. I am here to speak tonight against the ordinance before you regarding policies to reduce public exposure to secondhand smoke. I commend the city for taking this action to regulate smoking. I am not a smoker and I detest the presence of smoke. However, I am firmly opposed to applying this ordinance to single-family homes with attached ADUs. I feel this is an infringement on individual property rights. Most ADUs are built for family members, either elderly family members or dependent children. What happens if elderly parents who have smoked all their lives moved into an attached ADU? Would this be illegal? Is this discrimination against seniors? In addition, the community has not been notified of this extension to attached ADUs. This potentially affects a lot of residents and is likely to discourage ADUs, which is counter to your stated intentions to try to encourage them. Furthermore, this council has not been transparent about their actions by this last-minute extension. I received the postcard about these changes. However, I do not consider a single-family home with either a JADU or an ADU as multi-unit housing, particularly if it's for a relative who is not paying rent. This ordinance is quite misleading. I strongly urge you to remove single-family homes with ADUs from the ordinance. Instead, pass the ordinance as originally intended. Let's get it approved, but don't interfere with individual property rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Our next speaker is Jennifer Griffin, and Lisa Warren is our final speaker on this item from the public. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor Darcy. I have a relative who's a senior now who has smoked her whole life on and off. She has pretty much been outside as she goes outside, and she has worked professional at a tech company. But then again, no one thought that we would be having, no one thought we would be having JADUs and ADUs in backyards or connected to single family homes. This is a whole new kettle of fish that has come out of Sacramento, Scott Wiener bill in the last 2 years. So also people are insisting that the ADUs can be 4 feet from property lines. I don't know if that has gone in or not. That's like insane. But if you're going to be pushing the limit with these types of housing units, and yes, an ADU, a JADU, and a single family home are a multifamily housing unit on a single family lot. That's where we're going with this. But having these units crammed up 4 feet from the property line subjects surrounding neighbors who have children playing in backyards who they thought were safe from secondhand smoke, crammed up against people who are living in JADUs or ADUs that may be smoking outside, and the children, or individuals, your pets, the smoke can drift 4 feet into adjacent properties. If we don't have the JADUs and ADUs 4 feet from the property line in the backyards, we don't have this problem. I think we don't know what Sacramento is going to come up with in the next couple of years with the housing bills. I mean, we're going to have them building JADUs on top of PG&E clearances if we're not careful. So I think that because things are being pushed, the ADU area, we have to do things like looking at limiting smoking in the backyards of people's homes. I don't think it's a good thing to do. It's difficult for my relative. She's fought smoking for 45 years, since high school. But you cannot, it's not her problem. She's not the problem. It is the people insisting having housing units 4 feet from the property line in backyard. That is the culprit. So we have to do what we have to do. The city has to protect its residents. And I'm sorry, this is our hand that is being forced by Sacramento and bad housing bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next and final public speaker on this item is Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa.
Hello. So ADUs and JADUs and multiple ADUs on one residential lot, those are being touted by the state and every city I've heard talk about it as a chance for additional affordable housing. So for there to be statements that ADUs and JADUs are being built for family members, it contradicts what the whole thing is supposed to be doing. And sure, there's going to be family members living in these, but if they're truly supposed to be increasing our housing stock and creating affordable housing, which we have yet to learn if it really works, there's no excuse for not including them in this ordinance. So I hope that you do the second reading without a hitch. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And that concludes our public commentary on this item. Bring it back to council. Before we bring it back to council for further discussion, I will ask the city clerk to conduct the second reading of the ordinance. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the second reading?
This is the second reading and enactment of ordinance number 21-2227, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino amending City Code Chapter 10.90 of Title 10, Public Peace, Safety, and Morals to prohibit smoking in multi-unit housing in certain outdoor areas, which also adds setback requirements for designated smoking areas and includes detached ADUs and JADUs in the regulations, and which includes a finding that the ordinance is exempt from CEQA.
Okay, and so for the purposes of discussion, I will ask for hands with regard to moving the second reading of the ordinance, and I'd like to ask for an omnibus motion to include the enactment of the ordinance as well. Vice Mayor Chow, your hand is up. Would you like to move the second reading?
Actually, I would like to make an attempt to see if we could possibly remove JADU and the second unit, especially the second unit, from the ordinance. I feel very uncomfortable that this is invading on people's property right. And if any homeowner wants to rent their second unit or JADU to a smoker or a non-smoker, it's their own prerogative. If they are a non-smoker, they can require non-smoking. If they are a smoker, and whoever renting a house can also rent anywhere. If they are a non-smoker, they can specifically look for.
Okay, Vice Mayor Chow, I really want to respect your right to speak, but procedurally, I'm asking for a motion. And so where we sit right now is on a second reading. If you wanted to modify the ordinance, I will refer to our city attorney to see what the options are for bringing forth a motion. But I believe that it would be a matter of simply providing direction so that we would go back to a first reading of an ordinance. Would that be correct, Madam City Attorney?
Yeah, the noticed action is to consider an act on the ordinance. So, and instead of conducting the second reading and adopting the ordinance at this time, the council could amend the introduced ordinance, reintroduce it for a first reading at this time.
Okay, and so Vice Mayor Chow, if you would like to do that, I'll entertain a motion to that effect. But before we start going into deliberation, I'd like to make sure that we do indeed have a motion to consider on the table. Do you, at this point, would you like to bring forward a motion for consideration and discussion?
Okay, so I move that we modify the current is it resolution or ordinance by removing JADU and second unit from the language, and then conduct a first reading of this revised ordinance.
Okay, is there a second for Vice Mayor Chow's motion? I do see Councilmember Moore as well as Councilmember Willie and Councilmember Way. And now Councilmember Willie only has a hand up. Councilmember Willie, did you want to second this motion?
Yeah, I'll second Vice Mayor's revised proposal. Yeah.
Okay, I will submit a substitute motion. And so I would like to move that ordinance number 21-2227 be read by title only, and that the city clerk's reading constitute the second reading thereof. In addition, I would like to move that ordinance number 21-2227 be enacted. Is there a second for this substitute motion? I see a hand raised still from Councilmember Willie, as well as a hand raised from Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Willie, did you want to second my substitute motion?
Yes, I'll second your substitute motion.
Okay, and so let me start out with the comments, since this is my substitute motion that's on the table. I do not support going back to where we were originally. I support the changes that were made to the original item that was visited upon us back in April. And so what I would like to do is explain my reason. I actually live in a single family home that is attached, that is affected by the original ordinance. And so I see the reasons why that would be considered a multifamily unit. And I didn't raise any objections. I think when you're looking at this ordinance, this is a matter of public health and safety. And so when I think of the considerations affecting single family units with ADUs and junior ADUs, I think they are in fact more pressing than the context in which I live, because even though I share structure with my immediate neighbor, we're completely insulated from each other with regard to ventilation. And so I don't know whether my immediate neighbor smokes or anyone in that household does. But I feel confident that if that was contained within that part of the structure, we would not be as affected as if we were living on a single family unattached or just a regular R1 plot, and there were ADUs or a junior ADU on the piece of property as well. I understand about private property rights, but again, I look at this as something that affects public health and safety, and especially with what we have gone through, not just locally or statewide or nationally, but internationally, worldwide, where it is obvious that cardiorespiratory health is extremely important. This is something that I feel is all the more pressing. So I will be supporting the substitute motion, and that's why I would like to move for enactment as following the second reading. And those are my comments on the substitute motion. I see a hand raised from Councilmember Willie, followed by Vice Mayor Chow.
So this is really tough. I mean, property rights, I mean, it's more important on the smaller lots. My house is on a 5,000 square foot lot. I can clearly smell the barbecues from the neighbors, but allowing people to have some sense of ownership of their property is also very important. I agree the respiratory concerns and stuff. So I'm really on the fence, and if I can, I'd like to go ahead and pull back the second for your substitute and stick with the second for Vice Mayor Chow's motion. It's tough, but
Okay, so you are going to withdraw your second of the substitute motion?
Yeah, as much as I like both, but I think the other one is more for the initial release, and maybe we revisit it at some point.
Okay, so let me ask if there is anyone else that would like to second the substitute motion to give that opportunity. I do see a hand raised from Vice Mayor Chow, as well as Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor Chow, did you want to second the substitute motion?
I have a question.
Okay, well then let me go to Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Moore, did you want to second the substitute motion?
Absolutely, and going back to the land use, California land use and planning law, the legal basis for all land use regulation is the police power of the city to protect the public health, safety, and the welfare of the residents. And what I feel like I'm hearing is that some members of this council do not want to do that duty. That's very disappointing. I'm also hearing from people who had no experience around smokers, and they don't have family members who have had lung cancer, which I have. And so I hope that There is concern for children who have to spend the first 18 years of their lives breathing secondhand smoke. I hope that this council is moved to protect those kids.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Moore. We have a hand raised from Vice Mayor Chow. Vice Mayor Chow.
So my dad was a heavy smoker, and he had a scare of lung cancer. He didn't eventually get it, but I grew up smoking secondhand smoke. So it's dear and to me, and I think many Chinese probably have that experience. However, as much as I want everyone to be healthy, I cannot force them. As much as we have residents complain about marijuana smoke coming from their neighbor, can we say no one can smoke marijuana at all in Cupertino? We can. This is a personal right. I have a question regarding I'm very uncomfortable with second unit. For example, if a house have 2 master bedrooms, so second unit doesn't need to have a kitchen, right? So if you have 2 master bedrooms, or even just 2 bedrooms with bathrooms, do they count as second unit, and then therefore the entire house can have to be smoke free? So how do we tell? Are we going to check every house to see if they have a bedroom with counted as second unit? How are we going to do that? Can I get some answer?
Did staff catch that question? And is anyone able to address
would any house
I can make an attempt to.
the second master bedroom then be counted as second unit? Therefore, the entire house has to be smoke free.
So, Mayor, if I could make an attempt to address that. So as you are aware, in our city, our code enforcement is on a complaint base. So we will obviously have to count on our residents.
I don't care about complaint. I mean, it will be subject to the ordinance. The entire house would have to be on no smoking, right? Even any house with just a second bedroom with the bedroom. Right, yes.
The question is if you would interpret that as a second unit.
If I would interpret a second bedroom as a second unit, no, I wouldn't interpret a second bedroom, because otherwise any house will have a second
with a bathroom. Do you interpret any second bedroom with a bathroom as the second unit, therefore subject to this ordinance?
No, I would not blankly interpret any unit with a second master bedroom to be a second unit.
And could you define how would you interpret second unit?
Sure. I mean, a second unit, it kind of falls in line with any other second unit with a cooking facility. In this case, it wouldn't have a cooking facility. So you have to look at accessibility to that particular unit, quote unquote unit. If we're talking about a bedroom itself, that wouldn't constitute as a unit.
I don't understand that. It doesn't need cooking facility. So
what I'm saying is
difference is there? It doesn't need external access.
Like I said, depending on the accessibility to that quote unquote unit, right? Yeah, imagine
like external access, right? I'm trying to clarify.
It doesn't need external access, right? It doesn't need the second unit doesn't need a kitchen facility. It doesn't need external access.
Correct. If we're just talking about a second unit without not a technical dwelling unit, but just by the definition for a second unit, without a cooking facility, without direct access to the entrance, but it should have some kind of separation from, for example, your ground floor itself has a master unit, has a vestibule, and then you have a stairs leading up to the second floor. And that ground floor is separated in terms of the independent accessibility to the entrance, and is being rented out as a unit, and that could be counted as a second unit. But
not rented out. We are not talking about rent.
I understand. I understand. Okay. What I'm trying to describe is depending on the case, right? When someone comes in and says that we have a second unit, what is the issue with the definition of second unit or interpretation of the definition of second unit? We'll have to look at what that layout looks like. If it's simply just a house with 2 bedrooms, it's not reasonable to say that a second bedroom in itself becomes a second unit.
But it's unless there's some kind of evidence. A house would have like 2 master bedrooms in the first floor, and the master bedroom often have a screen door open to the backyard, would that then qualify?
It could be. We'll have to see what that situation is. Again, Vice Mayor, you're talking about sort of one size fits all, situation here. Every house is a little different. Every layout's different. We'll have to see if that legitimately could be a second unit. In other words, if you were to rent that unit, does that allow you the sort of independence or accessibility of that unit itself? But if you're just talking about, I have two master bedrooms on the second floor, does that unit a second unit? No, that's just second master bedroom.
Under this ordinance, even if I don't rent the second unit out, I'm still subject to the ordinance of non-smoking, right?
Right, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So whether I rent it out or not doesn't matter. As long as we pass this tonight, anyone has a second unit that qualify under this murky definition, which we don't know yet, someone will not be able to smoke in their own house. Yes, we think that's not right to smoke. However, someone will be committing something that we can cite them for code enforcement violation if someone reports. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. And I'm wanting to call a vote on the substitute motion because I think it's pretty clear that there isn't the support for it, but I didn't want to get the vote on the record. Councilmember Wei, did you have a comment on the substitute motion or questions relating to that? Okay, I see that you've now lowered your hand, so thank you for that. And so I'm going to go ahead and call a vote on the substitute motion. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote on that?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Wei?
Nay. Actually, I have a comment, but that's okay.
Councilmember Willie?
No.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Nay.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
The motion fails with Warren Paul voting yes.
Okay, and now we're back to the original motion, which is, to my understanding, the original staff recommendation of the first meeting that we had. So we're back to our first reading of the ordinance that was originally proposed, not in this meeting, but in our prior meeting on this. And so that is Vice Mayor Chow's motion, and I believe that was seconded by Councilmember Willie. We have a hand raised from Councilmember Wei. Councilmember Wei, did you have any follow-up questions or a comment on the motion on the table here?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. Actually, I have a couple comments. I'd like to add on to Councilmember Moore's public safety statement. I believe this whole council, we all are very conscientious about public safety. The reasons that I'd like to make a couple comments is, if you look at the ordinance closely, it says signage. No smoking signs shall be posted as required. That means any single-family homes with a JADU or a second unit as defined as whether it has kitchen or not, as long as it has access to outside is included. You got to put a no smoking sign on this residence. It is really a private right thing, not public health. So I like to see that I think we're over-regulating it. And the second thing I want to make it, this ordinance is for public health, and I believe every one of us really is for it. It's not something to add more restrictions to ADUs to discourage ADUs. It's nothing to do with Sacramento's laws. This is our council is going to protect our public health. What is public health? It's for multi-residence units like condos, condominiums, where an owner cannot control who buys the next door, who rents the next door, and we are protecting public health. So we need to balance public health with private rights. I really feel that this is a great ordinance to pass, but if we include so restrictive that any single family home with a JADU or a second unit has to put a sign, no smoking, and even if they want to smoke, if their parents want to smoke, they cannot smoke. If people don't report it, they're okay, but if people report it, they are in violence of this ordinance. I simply think we are for public health, but we need to balance it with private rights.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Wei. I don't see any other hands raised at this point. I will go ahead and make a comment. And I'll go ahead and harken back to my own living arrangement. Again, my family lives in a single family household arrangement. And my feeling on it is absolutely this is about public health, and if we are thus restricted, then I don't see any rationale whatsoever that would prevent us from reaching into single-family lots that have multiple units on it. And so I am disappointed, to say the least, that we're not taking a more consistent effort to make sure that the public safety and health is preserved. However, this is a significant step on the motion that's on the table for a first reading. And so, who knows, maybe one of the three will have a change of heart between now and the second reading and decide to try to make it a little bit more restrictive in our next second reading. So I will be going ahead and supporting the motion that is on the table, even though, personally, I think it is not particularly consistent and considerate with regard to the people that will be adversely affected in the single family plots that are standalone R1s. So that's my comment. Madam City Clerk, did you, I guess you didn't read the ordinance by title only initially. Did you want to do that? And if so, would it be of benefit to take a brief break so that you could pull the appropriate language from one of our prior meetings so that we capture the ordinance being suggested here?
Mayor, if I may, could we have a clarification by the Vice Mayor of her motion? And it might be helpful just to bring up the language of the ordinance. It currently defines multi-unit housing to include attached or detached ADUs, JADUs, and second units. So what staff would like clarity on is whether the ADU portion of that stays in or is intended to be removed by the Vice Mayor's motion. And Katie or someone, would you be able to share your screen to show that? Because I believe the motion was to remove JU and second units, which leaves attached or detached ADUs in the definition. So I was just wanting clarity if that was the intent. That was not actually what the prior version of the ordinance that was provided to council had. So the
prior version didn't have the multi-unit housing definition, which include the ADU.
And sorry, Vice Mayor Chow, you'll need to speak up a little bit.
Okay. Sorry, just clarify. So you mean this definition of multi-unit residence was not in the prior version of the ordinance?
Katie, could you clarify what the original staff recommendation was?
So can everybody hear me? Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulty.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the original draft ordinance that we brought excluded single family homes, whether or not they had ADUs, and it excluded ADUs. And then as a change that was requested, at that meeting, we included single family homes with attached ADUs under the ordinance regulations. And then at the following meeting, we also brought back a version to include attached and detached ADUs, JADUs, and second units. So that's what we are seeing this evening. So there were a couple different iterations in the past.
Okay, let's just try to clarify that. And thank you for putting this language up on the screen, Katie. I think what we're looking at is the second sentence under Roman numeral 1, where your cursor begins. Multi-unit residence also includes single-family homes with an attached or detached accessory dwelling unit, junior accessory dwelling unit, or second unit. And so I think this could be remedied by simply deleting this sentence, but let's check with the Vice Mayor to see if that is her intention in bringing forth this motion. And my understanding of what the original ordinance was basically that deletion. But Vice Mayor Chow, is that your intention here, to exclude single families with an attached or detached ADU or a junior ADU or second unit?
I think my original motion only mentioned the JADU and the second unit. I didn't mention the attached unit. But I am a little concerned that we are including single-family home with attached unit under the definition of a multi-unit residence, because I'm afraid then in case any state law change, this might subject single-family home to some streamlining, because having an ADU would qualify it as multi-unit housing project. So I'm concerned of lumping this together.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the motion the vice mayor made only referred to excluding JADUs and second units. I guess the question that Heather's raised is, did you mean to include ADUs, or are we really just trying to exclude single family homes with junior JADUs and second units? Just so we know how to amend the language.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're kind of talking in circles here, but Vice Mayor Chow has sort of contradicted herself as to whether to answer yes or no to your question, essentially.
I could read the definition of accessory dwelling unit in junior, or the definition of junior accessory dwelling unit, if that is helpful.
I know it's not helpful.
Okay, that's fine then.
Right? No, it's just not. So basically, Katie, if you highlight junior accessory dwelling unit or second unit at the end of that sentence, okay? So what's happening here is that the vice mayor's fine with deleting that. What she's thinking about is whether to delete the first part of that sentence as well. Vice Mayor, I would respectfully submit that you should make a decision at this point. Do you want to put a motion forward, or should we simply table this for another time?
I would. I think I think a better language. It's the same motion, but a better language would be taking out single-family home with attached unit from the multi-unit residence definition, but mention it wherever we mention multi-unit residence, mention multi-unit residence or single-family with an attached unit. That way, the scope of the ordinance is the same, but then we are not lumping a single-family home under multi-unit residence. I think that's confusing.
Well, at this point, I don't think that we're prepared to comb the entirety of the ordinance and make those changes. Maybe I'm the only one who understands what your concern is, but I think that it would take some wordsmithing, and we shouldn't be modifying on the fly with this additional factor. So I guess to clarify your concern, you don't want multi-unit residents lumped in or encompassing a single family R1 property is basically what your concern is. And you want this basically scrubbed in order to answer that concern that you've identified, again, respectfully, but somewhat on the fly in the middle of this discussion. So what I would suggest is that we bring this back at another time so that staff can go back and address your concern, because I simply feel like we're not prepared at this point to proceed with a first reading of a modified second reading.
I don't feel that strongly about the multi-unit residence. I have that concern. I wonder how Mike Seconder thinks. If he's okay with, if council member really think that's okay, maybe we just strike JADU and the second.
Willie, are you okay with deleting the gray highlighted language from this sentence?
Yes. And
okay, so Vice Mayor Chow, you do have an agreement from your seconder that the motion on the table is simply what's found in the original second reading ordinance, but with this language struck.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. I don't see any other hands up at this point. And so what I will do is to ask for Katie, if you could stop sharing so I can see. Yeah, so there are no other hands raised. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote? Well, okay. I think what you should do is conduct the first reading with the ordinance as modified and then conduct the roll call vote.
Oh, sorry, can I try to clarify something first?
Sure.
I looked at the language of the ordinance, okay? So I looked for multi-unit. Here I see multi-unit housing, not multi-unit residence, as in the definition. Multi-unit housing, multi-unit housing, multi-unit housing, and multi-unit housing. And here, multi-unit residence. And that's only in the definition. So it's inconsistent. And my concern is multi-unit housing is a term that's used in state bills a lot of times to define what applies. So then I think now I feel what we need is really to separate. Okay, no, I think it's true. We cannot, to make it clear, we need to make sure that multi-unit housing here doesn't apply to single-family home. Otherwise, there will be other implications. So,
just to clarify, the multi-unit housing reference is in the findings, and in the actual ordinance language, it refers to multi-unit residents.
So common area.
So they're not in conflict with the ordinance itself.
Councilmember White, you have your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Yes, actually, after I listened to Councilmember the deliberations about multi-unit housing, I think we have a definition of multi-unit housing for condominiums, and this ordinance is include multi-unit housing includes single-family home. I would like to make a substitute motion to delete whole language on single-family home.
So just
so that we don't have this mixed definition of multi-family units.
Okay, so make your substitute motion.
Okay.
What is your substitute motion? Well,
to delete the whole sentence of multi-family single-family homes.
Delete this all this sentence, right?
Yes. If you look at the ordinance.
Sorry, well, please stop. Procedurally, I don't know if there is a motion on the table with a second, because we did have a motion and a second, but Vice Mayor Chow, the maker of the motion, started seemingly having second thoughts with regard to this particular issue. So Vice Mayor Chow, is your motion still on the table?
Okay, I'm okay with modifying my motion to strike the whole sentence here, so it's more clear. Otherwise, it's confusing. Yeah. So we'll just strike this sentence.
Okay, now we really are back at the original ordinance. Okay, so all right, so
I could show those changes on the screen if you'd like.
Well, Vice Mayor Chow, if you'd stop sharing. Okay, so Katie, why don't you share your screen? It was just that sentence that she had highlighted, deleted. So the entire.
There's one other in number 5. We also had to make just a minor adjustment.
Okay. To be consistent with that deletion.
Correct.
With or without. Okay, so Councilmember Willie, do you accept that modification to the motion on the table?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's a long way to come back exactly where we started. There is a motion, there is a second. Let me see, well, Councilmember Moore, you have your hand up. Councilmember Moore.
Oh, okay, so is this lined out red section the changes that you have for I? Because it still says attached single-family homes. So it seems like
Correct.
the council members are trying to make sure that smokers in a single-family residence can pollute the air for junior ADUs and ADUs. Is that right? I'm not really sure what their objective is.
Yeah, I mean, this is the original. This is purely the original one that was considered.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
But this says single-family homes.
Well, like I said, that's the type of home that my family lives in, an attached single family. So basically, it's I guess you know, not I don't want to go too far into characterization, but it's basically protecting the single family R1, right, from this type of
That's excluding all detached single family.
Okay, so it's somewhat elitist. So if you own a single family home, what this is suggesting is that if you want to earn some extra money, having an ADU or provide some affordable housing for someone, that they would be then subjected to secondhand smoke.
You know, I don't know about elitist. I mean, you know, I can speak directly, you know, to the home values. I mean, which is not really, really different. I would say it's confusing and inconsistent, which is, you know, what I said originally. But we're back at the, we truly are back at the original staff recommendations.
Yes, Mayor Paul, I definitely agree with you. And I think that it puts people into certain boxes, which I think is unfortunate.
Could I make a comment?
Let me go to, so Katie, if you could stop sharing your screen so I could get a sense of.
Councilmember Moore mischaracterized our intention, so I'd like to counter that.
Vice Mayor Chow, please.
Anyone who wants to rent apartment, they can rent from anyone. They don't have to rent. They want to rent ADU. There are many selections, and then they can, if they really don't want to be subjected to secondhand smoke, just like when you rent a hotel room, you can request a non-smoking home. You can request a non-smoking home ADU, non-smoking JADU, non-smoking whatever. That's your right, and you still have that right. We are not taking that right away from anyone. And we are just saying, a homeowner, yes, I cannot control what my neighbor does. It's their property, even though it's 4 feet, even though it's just with a wall. But when it's a condo, it's their property. I can't control that. That's just the limit of my freedom. So we are just saying the homeowner, this ordinance shouldn't invade in the right of a homeowner on their property. And if they, God forbid, would like to smoke, I cannot forbid them, just like I cannot say no one can use drugs in Cupertino, although I wish I could do that. But can I? I can't. So I think we are not, we are just trying to protect everyone's right, and this doesn't limit anyone from renting a non-smoking apartment anywhere. That sign is clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. Unfortunately, I'm not able to raise my hand. I mean, but let me make my quick comment before Councilmember Moore speaks. I understand and hear what you're saying, Vice Mayor Chow. I just don't understand why, with that logic, you're able to constrict me and my neighbors from smoking as well. Because qualitatively, you know, I think it's actually less of an impact given the architecture and setup of our development. So I don't see this as consistent. I'm willing to take the hit health-wise. I don't see why this wouldn't be applied to the single-family homes, especially as Councilmember Lilly was saying, with relatively small lot size. So I personally just don't see the consistency in this. I don't see any other hands raised at this point.
Two different owners. You and your neighbors are separate property owners.
Yeah, but if I want to put an ADU in my backyard, you're basically effectively saying I'm now I'm now restricted in the same manner that you
Your
were.
property. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a single
Consistent.
family attached
To me,
housing.
that's very consistent.
I don't think it's consistent at all. I think if you're trying to protect the public health, you should apply it in a consistent manner. And if you're going to build an ADU next to a building that's attached, just like you were saying before, and the reason why you changed this in the first place, it's the exact same identical consideration. And so, you've made the compromise here, and you've made the compromise in favor of private property rights for a certain type of property. So I think you should live with that.
We need to compromise. We want public health, but we also want freedom.
You'll never convince me that this is consistent. I'm sorry. Councilmember Moore.
I agree with you, Mayor Paul. It is inconsistent, and you would be able to add an ADU to your property, I believe, and you would be restricted. We are also looking at the potential for SB 9 to make single-family zoned residences have up to 6 and possibly even 8 units on them, on those lots. And I think that what we're trying to do with these laws is to provide more housing in the single-family residential areas. And I really find it appalling what some of the council members are suggesting, that if you own a single family home, and a renter wants to come, and they can like it or lump it and go off to an apartment complex with 100 or 200 units, but they can't be in a junior ADU in a less dense area, or be in an ADU in a less dense area and have their health and safety protected according to what some of the council members here are wanting.
You're talking about maybe 5% of smokers in all of the single family homes.
Vice Mayor Chow, you're out of order. You'll need to raise your hand in order to speak. Councilmember Way, you have your hand up. Thank
you, Mayor Paul. I think we can come to agree to disagree on this issue. I'm thinking public health is very, very important, but single family home privacy is also very important. I'm trying to balance this. And a lot of homes already have a second unit. They have an extra entrance, and all of a sudden they have to put a no smoking sign on it. Do we ask them their public input? So I just feel that maybe we can take this step to pass this ordinance without single family home, and then maybe later we can redefine what is a multi-family unit. If the law changes, we can say a single family home with 2 or 3 units are multi-family units. So I think we can redefine it if it comes to that point. But at this moment, I feel it's a good balance. We protect public health and also give single-family homeowners their freedom of what they want to do. We will educate them if they smoke. So I feel this ordinance is good for the moment. And in the future, if we want to add it, modify it, I think we can do that.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Way. I don't see any other hands up. I will be voting for this for the same reason I said before. It is a step in the right direction, but I will note that, by making it illegal to smoke in a multifamily unit, such as an apartment complex, you're basically incentivizing more building of ADUs with a single-family context, so that people can provide a market alternative to smokers. And so I feel like I don't want to use hyperbolic modifiers or anything. I just feel this is inconsistent. But hopefully, we do revisit this and expand and start to think more about the fairness considerations and the public safety considerations as applied more uniformly. So I don't see any other hands raised at this point. Madam City Clerk, if you could conduct that first reading as modified with the edits made, that would be appreciated. And then we can vote on the motion on the dais.
This is the first reading of ordinance number 21-2227, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino amending City Code Chapter 10.90 of Title 10, Public Peace, Safety, and Morals to prohibit smoking in multi-unit housing in certain outdoor areas as modified. Did I say as modified? Which includes a finding that the ordinance is exempt from CEQA.
Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Way,
Aye.
Councilmember Willie,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow,
Aye.
Mayor Paul.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so we're on to public hearings and ordinances and action items. After public hearings, there are no public hearings. Let's take a 5-minute break. It says 8:37 on our clocks. We'll reconvene at 8:43. Thanks very much with item number 15.